motion for Joan to be secretary.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright. Comments from the assembly? No correspondence, review of the meetings from the previous minutes, or minutes from the previous meeting.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Plan review, have the Morgantown Road Commercial Development, and the Fire Department review letter.
Hello, I'm Brian Gracie from Audubon Land Development. I have with me Debbie Reesner from Persich, and Eric Munns from Traffic Planning and Design. We received some review letters today. One's from Craft Engineers dated January 18th. There's also a review letter from Technicon with respect to fire safety dated January 17th. And we have the Twin Valley Fire Department review dated January 11th. We kind of went through everything today. We didn't have a lot of time to really get into it, but from what we can tell, everything on the review letters are well complied from our point of view. We agree with many of the comments, and I think the rest that we don't necessarily agree with, we'll figure out a way to resolve it. I thought maybe what we could do today, because we're not in any position to ask for any approval or anything, just to solicit questions from you folks, and we'll try to incorporate them into our plans.
Is everybody familiar with the plan, or do you need a brief overview?
Yeah, an overview might be helpful if you've had it all now.
Okay, Scott's letter indicates this is for the two parcels opposite the Morgantown Mom outlet, the Mom parcel. I'll just give you a general aerial view of what's existing there now. And this is what we're proposing. Is just a warehouse distribution building, proposed retail building, and a proposed restaurant and associated parking, storm, landscaping, lighting. And then some additional, as part of the HOP, there's some additional traffic improvements and signal improvements being proposed on Morgantown Road.
Where's the traffic light at in relation down there?
Here.
Okay.
Yes. This would be a signalized intersection, and this is unsignalized.
They'd be creating a fourth leg to that intersection, McDonald's to the mall.
So the position of the light doesn't change.
No, well, there will be definite improvements to the intersection, but the light itself will, for the most part, be at the same. The three legs pretty much won't be adjusted as far as the other locations.
That other one just a right in, right out?
This one here?
Yes.
Yes.
What's on the other side? Is that potential entrance to the hotel?
Yeah,
Yes.
what we're trying to do is get a driver that provides easy access.
Right.
For folks coming this way, you can hang a right or right in and get to the hotel lot over
So
there.
that's an entrance only? Is that okay?
Just to clarify that the movement on the other side of the road is a right-in only. The first, the driveway to the north, that's, you could make lefts from there if you wanted to, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
right in, right out, and left.
So there is, and then there's a proposed left turn lane
Right here.
coming down to that driveway as well.
There's
So
no
that's a full
room in there.
movement access point there.
There's no room there, it's already there.
Not
That road's
close.
widened right there.
I was gonna
so-
say,
Oh.
apparently,
Yeah, so, again, Eric Mounts with TPD. So at the signalized intersection, to the south, Mr. Records, you're correct, the left turn lane, the width is basically there because it mirrors the left turn lane coming the opposite direction towards McDonald's. As you go north on Route 10 towards the bridge over the turnpike, there's a little bit of widening through that area, but we're making use of what we can without impacting the bridge. There is enough width there to maintain the shoulders and fit that left turn lane in. And the one thing I would note with the design of that left turn lane, one thing, and then with the right turn only driveway across the street to the Holiday Inn, PennDOT, when we met with them, was pretty adamant about, they did not have a problem with the right in only, but the concern was they wanted to make sure there wasn't illegal turning movements to that driveway. So we actually would have to put, with the design of the left turn lane we're putting in, it would actually be mountable concrete as opposed to just striping. So it would prevent people from making an illegal left into that driveway. That was the condition PennDOT put on it. They said, look, we agree that right in makes sense to minimize basically going all the way to the signal, through the McDonald's,
Right.
cutting through the parking lots thing. They said it does make sense, but we wanna make sure it's only right in. So we wanna see that median put down the middle of Route 10. When I say median, it's in lieu of this typical striping you have that goes with the left turn lane, it would actually just be the mountable median to physically prevent people.
How tall are we talking, like this, or just speed bump
An
size?
extra
No.
large speed bump.
It's basically the type of, it's tapered on the edges down to flush with the roadway. I think they're 8 inches in the center at the maximum height, but they are tapered, they're mountable, so like,
18 inches, right?
yeah,
No,
for
yeah.
example, if a fire truck needed to cross over it, they easily could. So it's not that you physically can't do it, but it's trying to prevent your typical driver from driving over it like they can paint.
It's
That
the
right
same,
in.
it's the same curve like in the inside of a traffic circle. So the
Yeah.
trucks, if they had to go up and on it, if you can picture those, that
The right turn only, if you're coming south, the right turn only into the hotel. Will that accept tractor trailers?
Yeah, we had it designed that it can
That's
accept
awesome.
tractor trailers. The other thing that we are doing with that, there is widening for a right turn lane as well. So we're basically, again, maximizing, you can get 150 feet of deceleration lane for that before you impact, again, the bridge over the turnpike, but the 150 feet does meet all PennDOT standards for the traffic we would expect going in there. And yes, we do have it designed for tractor trailers.
Want to talk about this intersection here?
Yeah, so as Mr. Anderson noted, it would be creating a fourth leg to the signalized intersection, upgrades the traffic signal. I think as many of you are aware, that signal went in the mid-80s and hasn't really had any real upgrades since that time. So you're likely looking at all new signal equipment at the intersection. Going southbound, as I said, you would be striping in a left turn lane into the driveway, 2 exiting lanes coming out from the driveway towards the signal. So basically, I guess for lack of a better term, one was modernization of the intersection from an equipment perspective and then adding the fourth leg. We have, from a traffic perspective, we met with PennDOT representatives of the Township in August of this year, talked through all the details of the site, have submitted a traffic study in conjunction with the land development submission. It's under review with both the Township and PennDOT at this point, but the findings of the traffic study, nothing, I would say, is showstoppers moving forward. We meet all the applicable standards and are proposing everything that was requested during the meetings we had over the summer.
Well, that was already, when they put that in alignment, that was to accept something like this. So
Yeah, to your point, the width of Route 10 and with the shoulders and whatnot, it's mostly there. There's a little bit of widening, as I said, basically from the northern driveway up towards the bridge, but for the most part, most of the pavement is there that's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, as Eric mentioned here, the review that I had put together, I did not complete the traffic impact, review at this time. I plan to issue a separate letter, just to, I wanted to at least get this letter out for the meeting, and I apologize it's gonna last a minute, but, those comments will follow so that they can address everything together. But that was, and I'm kind of losing track where it was. Okay, I think we touched on the signals, the signal questions I had. It seemed like most of the signal arms were having to be relocated, which I assume that at that point, then there was gonna be more or less modifications of everything as far as PennDOT's concerned.
Yeah, because of the implementation of the fourth leg, there's 2 of the 3 need to move regardless. And then when you look at the other 2 and the equipment that's on them being outdated, it's highly probable that we're just end up with all new signal equipment.
Okay, and then, there was the restriction, I just wanna point it out to the board, it seemed like that wall for the cemetery.
Yes, thanks Scott, I actually forgot to bring that up. That was another key discussion at the meeting we had with PennDOT. In a lot of cases with new developments, there would be similar to what we're talking about with the right turn lane into the Holiday Inn driveway. A lot of times you would have that approaching the signalized intersection as well, based on the volumes. Given the church, between the burial plots, and there's a stone wall basically right on the edge of the roadway, there's just not any ability to widen going north on Route 10 to put a right turn lane into the driveway approaching the signal. We did talk about that with PennDOT. They basically said, yeah, pretty apparent, just document it through the traffic study process. So we've done that, we've provided all the appropriate pictures. Operationally, that approach works fine with the through and the right turn being made out of that same lane, so I don't see it being an issue, but it is a good point that that was one of the other discussion items we had with PennDOT.
But the right turn is not gonna impede traffic really, because as soon as the light turns green, the right turn are gonna continue to move into the parking lot. So it's not impeding traffic, at least I don't see it that way.
No, in all honesty, when you're looking at the volumes, it's not a significant right turn volume. I will tell you, we do marginally meet if you go by PennDOT's warrants, it would show we should have a right turn lane by their standards, but like I said, it's just the burial plots literally are behind the stone wall there, so there's just no room to widen. And they acknowledged that, they just wanted us to go through the process of documenting everything.
That intersection too does have improvements that are, there's a strip owned by the St. Thomas, I believe, that they will be they need to, in order to get those improvements in for the curb, a guide rail, retaining wall, and I think the ADA ramps, they will be within that strip, so there's gotta be some coordination on this with them to allow for that. They use as much as they can on that property, or as little, I'm sure, on their end, to get what's required, but that right lane is, first glance, it's kinda hard to believe it can make that work.
Yeah, so where we were at with that is, again, back to the meeting over the summer, PennDOT wanted to ensure the existing driveway for the mall and McDonald's lined up and had good alignment with the fourth leg of the signal. So we got the alignment to work and have radii that would accommodate all the trucks and whatnot that needed to be in and out of that driveway. The entering radius, so going north on 10, making the right-hand turn in, to Scott's point, there's that sliver owned by St. Thomas. We couldn't fit it all on our property, so there's a piece of that radius that's on the St. Thomas property. So at a minimum, we'll need to work with them on an easement for that area.
questions, I think there are a couple comments in here that if we weren't bringing up the question that asked for, some clarification. Per the ordinance, there was some questions that I had in the letter that I wouldn't mind asking them to just discuss. If we're okay to go forward and do that, then, it sounds like most of what's in the letter, if there's questions you guys will have, I think some of them here, just at this point, there weren't any waiver requests. I think there was comments in the letter that pointed out areas that may or may not lead to waivers. Sounds like they'll resolve them as they can and then bring that forth in a letter, request letter, but, in the review letter on the first page, I think comment number 2, which speaks to the property on the opposite side of Route 10, it sounds like that's something that you'll work towards.
Provide full
to grant.
design for that, yes.
Alright. Similar to that comment, but comment number 3 on page 2. On the Berks County mapping, it shows that those are 2 different properties. Is that accurate, or was there something where,
There are two different parcels.
are there 2 different parcels?
Right. We will approach the Turnpike Commission about whether or not they would allow us to merge the 2 or not.
Okay.
We only have a lease, we don't own the property,
Yep.
so we'll have to get there.
And just to clarify, it is, the properties are both owned by the Turnpike. There's a lease there, so there's somewhat of an extra step, I think, on the developer here to proceed with a couple things in the letter that are, in this case, there's 2 properties, somewhat the square property across from McDonald's. It's a little more than 2 acres, that's separate than the rest of the property. So with that property line, there's questions of setbacks and whatnot, it's not a consolidated property, and they're looking into that at this point, so it sounds, so. That's, the only other thing I would say, just to get ahead of it, is where the other driveway was coming in, it seemed like that might be another situation. The comment number 2 speaks to it, that there's 2 other properties there, or at least it appeared that way on the county mapping, where the right-in comes in. I think, although it's somewhat common ownership, I believe,
Okay.
McDonald's there, between McDonald's and.
it's actually,
Holiday Inn
Here.
property.
yeah, right there, I don't know what those 2 properties are, but it seems to be right on the property line.
There's 2 pad sites there between McDonald's and the Holiday Inn.
My only concern on a plan review end of it is a driveway on a property line, and is there encroachments per the ordinance that they're running into? Just something I had seen to point out that just,
Okay, we will address it.
Who owns that parcel right there? The one to the south of the right turn
This here?
entrance?
This.
No, on the
so the,
entrance only,
so the right in, it looked like to me, the
right
one,
there, that parcel
Yeah,
to
looks
the
like
south.
I think north of it was Mom Associates LLC, and then to
Yeah.
the south of it was Morgan Inn LLC.
Same
Maybe I have
owner.
them backwards, but,
It's the same owner. 2 separate parcels, but same owner.
yeah.
Right.
Which is-
I just wanted to know if it was a different owner,
No, it's definitely
Yeah.
on land.
Mr. Nielsen's.
Yeah.
So those were the 2 comments there, really, to kind of point out and seem like a little bit of, investigation right there on their end, but,
Yeah.
there was a comment in the zoning ordinance that buildings on a common lot should have a, similar architectural scheme.
We typically do that anyway.
Simply putting that in there just to point it out that it's part of the ordinance, but, that was number 5 on page 2. Again, if you guys are looking into these comments, I don't wanna go down through there, if they can address those, if it's something that they can address, but comment number 9 on page 2, this speaks to right now where the ball field is on, straight across, I think, from
On the
McDonald's.
backside of their property.
Yes. That is zoned residential, so there's supposed to be a landscape screen all the way through. That area is using an existing vegetation, there's a tree line there.
Yeah,
It's to the discretion of the planning commission, the board, to say whether or not that's adequate to meet the screening, per the ordinance or not. The only thing, typically you want a year-round cover. It's pretty thick through there, I don't think they'll impact that tree line. The question is whether or not that would meet a tree screening if they do both sides of that. So put it in where they can't keep that tree line and then just kind of skip over where they can maintain that tree line. Typically you wanna see evergreens there, but if it's the ball field, I don't know if that's more of a consideration of, if you really wanna overdo it if there's
the
already.
thing that concerns me with the evergreens, not that you can't make evergreens grow in with other trees, but if they're completely blocked out by the sun, you're not gonna get evergreens to grow.
This would be in the area behind the restaurant, and then there's like a drive aisle.
Right, but the trees would be on the east side
Yeah,
of the,
okay,
or
I see what you're saying for the.
east and southeast side of the evergreens, they're not gonna get sun
Yeah.
till afternoon.
My feeling on this is the ordinance also ask for a stipulation, either put on the plan or an agreement that if that would die, that it needs to be replaced. I think for that reason, there's good consideration of saying it
So-
could work.
It could be as simple as just saying that they maintain the density that's there now, or better.
I think something along those lines.
Yeah, something,
Scott, I can't pull it up right now. Does the zoning ordinance specifically defer to the planning commission's interpretation? Do you know, or is that typically it's gonna be up to the zoning officer?
right.
And
I think it,
there would be some limitation on the planning commission interpreting, that
What's
buffer
allowed,
strip.
what is it?
If it says it needs to be year-round screening, then it needs to be year-round screening. There's less discretion in the zoning ordinance to just grant a waiver or an exception to that.
yeah, true, that was the revised landscaping ordinance. Landscaping
Yeah,
slash lighting.
I'm not carrying that with me, so we'll follow up on that.
Either way, we'll comply.
On page 3, there were some comments regarding parking lighting. The one comment I think, just to bring up, for the parking of the warehouse, distribution center there, they have, I think it was 67 spaces that are around the building that are standard spaces, I think 18 by 9. In the back, there are larger spaces, 60 by 12 maybe, I think.
It would be primarily for the trailer in the back.
Some of them
And what
were,
it's for like overflow, storage for, on a temporary basis of, if someone had to make a delivery and there wasn't room to park at the warehouse, they would leave the truck there and they have those the tractor part that would back them into the spaces. And then when they needed them to come in, they would just pull them over to the building.
when I was looking at the plan, it looked like there needed to be at least another 13 spots, which they give minimum requirements of 9 by 18. I guess you could consider those parking spots, but it seemed like there might need to be an adjustment for that in that area. It seemed like there was plenty to do so, but that was just one to point out there, and so that was basically the double stack is storage of,
Trail.
yeah, okay.
There would be no, that would be one thing to consider though, that there's no,
Storage of,
storage of and tractor trailers with their lights on facing the development that's directly behind that. So there would definitely need to be some type of buffer barrier, glare screen, something.
Yeah, and those comments are
I
on
think that
there.
would be limited, the parking's behind the warehouse, so the warehouse building falls between the residential area and the parking.
Okay.
Yeah, it's either facing the turnpike or the building itself. I don't think there will be, for those spots, a line of sight really. At least not for an extended period of time, just like a backing in. But, sorry, I went back a page. On page 4, I think we already touched on this, the no approach for the signal and the encroachment on the St. Thomas property there. We have not received comments from the Berks County Planning Commission. The Conservation District with the permitting.
We're scheduled to meet with them.
Okay. So there hasn't been a submission, it's a
No, we're doing a
pre-application.
pre-app, yes.
Gotcha.
We reached out, they actually just got back to me today to schedule the actual meeting, so we are meeting with them for pre-app.
And then PennDOT had received the traffic scoping, but
We made a formal submission of traffic study on the 4th. They typically run about 4 weeks, so I would expect early February, we'll get the first full review from PennDOT.
okay. On page 5, there was a question about that, again, on the mapping, from what I saw, that the northern property, the larger property, kind of blended in with the rest of the turnpike property. And I was just curious on that line, how that was established. With that.
The line of demarcation between our leased property and the
Yep.
turnpike, that was provided based upon a survey that Dorsich did under the direction of the turnpike. We got as much information from the turnpike as we could, just establish that line, right with the turnpike. They approved the location of that right of way.
Was that the right of way line then?
The line that's
For
on,
that?
yes. Make sure that I'm talking about the same thing, this line here, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yep.
Okay.
Is that just the end of your lease? I mean,
This is the
That's
lease
correct,
property,
that's the
yes.
end of
that's what you're
our
leasing and the rest is not leased.
This is all still turnpike, but this is a lease
Right,
property.
yeah.
Somewhat jumping around here, but in that same area, there is stormwater improvements between the edge of the turnpike paving and that lease line where there will be grading and, obviously, I think the turnpike will be open to discussing that, but our concern was that's outside of the lease agreement and.
Actually, we do have an easement to make improvements.
Yeah, here we go. This is the easement here. That would incorporate the storm improvements.
And that's established with the turnpike at this
Yeah.
Pine Ridge, in
Yes.
process, okay.
Yeah, we did early on, that's probably a couple of years now.
Gotcha.
We, had to provide a grading so that they could establish the easement before we signed the lease agreement. They were very finicky about what they want. I mean, I'm not allowed to touch their pipes. I'm allowed to go in and grade and make grade swells, but I can't touch that pipe with any inlets or head walls. I mean, took a while to get that approved.
I think to that point then, I think that we would ask for you to review that, I assume you'd wanna see
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I think it's mentioned periodically through here that we would need to just review the lease agreement and then any easements or access agreements that you have with the turnpike or any other adjacent property to make sure they're not gonna go away at that point during the project.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you on that one. Number 10 on page 5 speaks to the traffic signal and that in that situation, they're gonna need the township to be the applicant for the work at that traffic signal. There's a very typical separate agreement between the township and the applicant for the understanding of what's to be expected there in this situation, the responsibility of the installation and, probably some future maintenance associated with.
And Scott, I think, just so Township is aware, I don't know if, and Eric, you may know this, do you know, the PennDOT recently implemented, they have an application for any time you do a new signal or modifications to a signal. It used to be that they did them one-off, basically the maintenance agreement for that by signal. They changed that over the past year, and they're actually looking for a blanket
For the
signal
entire
maintenance
township.
agreement from the municipality. So I don't know if you've done that yet. If not, you will likely be getting that request from us. They're not doing them one-off anymore. They're basically looking for a blanket agreement now from each municipality.
Yeah,
We've not seen that yet, but we can address that.
So Scott, I'll coordinate with you. It's standard forms. Eric, obviously, I'll forward you the maintenance agreement template that they sent out.
Okay, I did have one thing here in my review letter, I kind of excluded the other driveway on comment number 12. Morgantown Road, for the township's classification, is a major, I think it's actually major arterial, so by definition in the ordinance, it's a major street for this section, which would then, the intersection of both the driveway and both driveways with that would require the 150-foot triangle, site triangle there. I had indicated in that situation, it's just the approach at the signal, it's actually both. And what I overlooked is the driveway ordinance qualifies that commercial driveway as a minor street, so therefore then it kind of kicks back in, so. There's the site triangles that need to be shown there. Number 14 on page 5, and it would also be, I missed the other one.
11, I believe, in
11,
that direction.
yeah, same thing. That's the curbing and sidewalk deferrals. I think in this situation, state road, obviously, it's gonna be somewhat at their discretion. The only question I would have is if there's any reason what they're showing for sidewalk is something different than we think would be requested, along this area. Reasonably, it's showing crossings. As Eric pointed out, it was, in a conversation previous, where they're not allowed now, which is across Route 10 at that signal. Currently, that's a no pedestrian crossing, I believe, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that was, so this is creating a crossing for all involved. The only thing I'm looking at here and somewhat overlooked, is seeing it now, is the connection of sidewalks into the development itself.
Yeah, we, honestly, when we were designing it, we didn't anticipate that there would be anyone making that journey from the site to the light and into Mama's Mall, but, and we certainly don't want any sidewalks or curbing going towards the turnpike.
Yeah, I agree. I think I guess the question I would just have is off of the, more or less the northeast
crosswalk.
corner. If somebody were to be walking to the restaurant or whatever the retail is, there's not really any connection for that into the site.
We have no objection to extending the sidewalk into the site, that's fine.
Yeah, I think the good portion of that, the good part of that is that it is a relatively flat area in there, so I don't think it's gonna be.
That's
Good
good,
challenge.
because you have food and a hotel, they're gonna cross.
Yeah, at least for that reason across the street.
Yeah.
But to that point, I still think that wouldn't change what the sidewalk is in the right of way or along the frontage, so I think the deferral for both the curbing and the sidewalk would be standard. page 6, there still needs to be the sewer and water coordination.
They were
Um,
both submitted.
They were submitted?
Yes, I coordinated with Denise and those submittals were made last week to both
Okay.
sewer and water.
Okay. The fire chief has provided a letter with comments, which I think, pretty standard. The Technicon, as fire marshal, provided a letter as well. Did you get
We got
that
both.
letter? Okay. Again, number 20 speaks to the traffic impact study comments to be pending. Stormwater, as with the stormwater, the basin requirements are 5-to-1 slopes. DEP regularly allows 3-to-1 slopes. If they were to utilize that, it's a waiver that's, again, it's on private property as well, so it's a reasonable request for a waiver.
That's something we see in here pretty often.
Yeah, somewhat of a strange requirement in the ordinance, but, there'll be the standard operation and, maintenance agreement.
Should there be fencing around this? You see kids from the residents maybe getting over there.
And that's gonna be, there's a ball field there.
There's an
Yeah.
existing chain link fence, I don't think we have any intention of taking that down, do we? Yeah, the right of way fence is still there right now. The basin would be here, but the fence is still in place here.
So the pond at the back of the distribution center will have that fence that's maintained then, I'm saying.
Does that fence go along here?
It goes along the cemetery, between your property and the cemetery,
Yeah.
goes all the way back that edge,
Okay.
and then it goes to the tree line or the hedgerow.
I think at the
Wraps down
corner,
around the entire lease area.
I think it may go all the way around, to be honest, through the tree line.
is there a stormwater facility south of that distribution center too?
No, this is an underground subsurface
Yeah.
facility, and this above surface is collecting from the restaurant.
And then that's just swales to the south of that?
Yeah, these are existing, well, I didn't bring, this isn't the grading plan, but yeah. The basin will be here,
I'm looking at, I'm sorry, Debbie, it's like where the legend is
okay,
on the southern side, right, about where your finger, right there. Yeah.
yes.
Is
There'll be a
that all
low spot
swales?
here, it was an existing swale, but now with
Okay.
the construction, there'll be a low spot in there. And it'll be connected to the storm system.
Yeah.
So this will be slightly regraded and connect in, and then that'll be directed to our basin.
And through there, I think they had room for there's a retaining wall and then the landscaping buffer, I don't know how much that right-of-way fence will be maintained through that area or not, but, no, I think it's, to your question, Roger, I don't think in the ordinance, this one would have a requirement for a fence along it, but, I guess it's a consideration for.
Since it's already fenced.
Yeah.
There's right-of-way fencing.
Oh, shoot. We just- Similar to the HLP agreement with the township, there's one there for the, storm sewer. That's to be expected for the HLP applications. The township will need to be the applicant, and therefore they'll look for a separate agreement between the developer and the township. Short of that, on page 8, in the general comments, number 5 and 6, and I think we, oh, I'm sorry, that's the, so we spoke about number 6. That was the Turnpike Commission and the coordination with them, since they are the owners of the property. The other question was to the southwest corner where there's improvements beyond what the curb width is now. There wasn't any, detailed information on the right of way or where those improvements will be, and, concerns of what property is that, and is there additional agreements and approvals that are needed. Really, that's, to just go down through the bullet points without going through everything, I think, short of what they said they can address. I would assume if there's anything they can't, they'll be approaching again with a letter for the waivers. As far as the comments in the letter go, that was, I think, the ones we've gone over.
Any other questions?
The only thing that I would add would be from a zoning perspective, I think we need to document somewhere in this plan the nature of the proposed distribution use a little better in terms of hours of operation, number of shifts. I think that might impact lighting standards, for example, or sprinkler. I see there's 40 employees projected on the sheet for parking. I think there needs to be either a narrative submitted with your next round or a plan note to sort of describe, to the extent you can, what the township should expect from the distribution center use. And the other uses too, if you know.
I think that 40 parking spaces you spoke of, I think that was for the two largest shifts, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Is that what?
So that's what we're, I think it's looking at roughly 20
We
employees
can
then.
include that in
for-
the narrative that we provide.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
When you're ready, I have several comments and questions, if I can, on behalf of the police department. I like the idea of the into the Holiday Inn. I've always said that to previous owners, so that's great. That will help with the traffic light. I can't really see the plans, but the intersection with the traffic light, will that be an in only, or will that be in and out?
In and out.
In and out, okay. And with that traffic light, I don't believe we have a preemption device on there right now. So maybe we could think about preemption device on that traffic light.
Well, I do believe, I believe you said something about that, did you not?
So, no, to your point, that traffic, the equipment is the original equipment.
Right.
There's no preemption, there's no
Correct, yeah.
battery backup. for
While we're
example.
at it,
There's a light with a frame, that's about it.
right, but there's no emergency preemption device for the emergency vehicles,
Right.
so, I mean, we're addressing that. The in and out, the other entrance way and out, where in relation to the current exit of the old turnpike would that be?
So, right
Right at it.
Right there?
Yep.
And that will be, we'll be coming down 10 south and being able to make the left, which is where the yellow lines are now, basically.
Yep, you'll have the widening for the left turn.
And that will be a right turn only there?
No, so
coming
you'll be
out.
able to make, it'll be full movement, so left and right, both in and out.
It's a little tight there, I think.
With respect to, I'm sorry.
Traffic, and it could, short distance there
So we
between the
did-
light and
We
some.
looked at it with the traffic study, the queuing of the cars from the signal don't back up anywhere close to that signal. You can look at it, it's, I wanna say it's about 400 feet from the stop bar to.
Sometimes that backs up pretty far there, the
It was,
traffic coming down,
So here's the expectation, what we had with PennDOT, we had this discussion, and the main movement that was discussed was the exiting left-hand turn movement from that driveway. Because obviously you have a left turn lane in, and the right turn movements are typically pretty straightforward. We had a discussion on the left, and the thought was, if there is any type of congestion during your peak periods, people are probably more inclined for the retail uses to use the signal.
I'm more worried about the tractor trailers coming out and trying to.
So we
make a
talked,
left.
so moving to the warehouse use, we talked about, obviously you're gonna have employees that you're gonna have a lot of local employees in all likelihood. So you likely will have, with shift changes, employee traffic making a left out of there. Tractor trailers, I fully acknowledge that there will be a handful that will make a left out of there to use 10 to 322, things that way, but for the most part, we would expect with the distribution type facility, they're gonna use the turnpike, they're gonna use 176 for the most part. So we don't expect, first of all, this is a smaller scale distribution facility, this is not a large distribution facility, a lot of trucks. So you're not gonna have constant turnover of trucks anyhow, but then from there, we would expect most are gonna be left in, right out from a truck perspective. So we talked about so that's a long-winded way of saying, we talked a lot about the left turn movement, and where we landed with PennDOT was, it doesn't make sense to force everyone through the commercial area to get to the traffic signal. The study shows operationally it does work, so we said it makes sense for it to be full movement. And if, for whatever reason, there are time periods.
It's gonna be what PennDOT says
Yeah.
is allowed anyway.
Yeah.
And then, with that roadway change, I know that the Turnpike Commission's slowly but surely going, will that give enough distance for their future widening of the turnpike in that area in the years to come without impacting that turn lane?
Right, I don't wanna speak out of turn, but I'm assuming if they just work through the lease, as you're noting,
Right.
they're working through this area right now.
Yes.
I would fully expect at least covered, that they have adequate room there with the existing right of way, correct?
Oh, yeah, we ended up making it bigger than what we
And then,
anticipated.
then, just two more and I'll sit down and be quiet. There is a lot of foot traffic at times, depending on the event at the Holiday Inn and at Mom's Mall. We do see a lot of people walking back and forth to Rite Aid, down to the bank. We see them walking down, so there is foot traffic at times and stuff like that, so we wanna keep that in mind. And then I guess the last question, and this will be for Mr. Brown, being as this is the Turnpike Commission property, whose jurisdiction?
Well, technically, they're under, I would think that they're under ownership, technically, they're not the landowner, but they are the designated owner at that specific time.
Just wanted to bring it up, it was brought up to my
Would that be
attention.
correct?
Jurisdiction from a land development standpoint would be the owner. The owner needs to certify the ownership.
I meant the law enforcement side.
Law enforcement is, you don't have are you saying that you don't have?
Well, I just wanna make sure, yeah, I'm just bringing it out. That was a question by one of the officers that was asked to me, because the troopers are under the impression it's their responsibility, whatever happens there.
On any turn, I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want you to get something and then, hey, thank you, but we're not helping you, you know, type situation. I'd rather have that explored ahead of time so that we're not getting, you know, catch 22 later on, so, but I'll sit down and be quiet now. Thank you.
So again, back to the foot traffic, that's what we were discussing with the sidewalk and the crosswalk,
Depending what's across the street, we're gonna have foot traffic, yes.
because they cross there now.
And to that point, I think if there were a sidewalk at that signal on the side of McDonald's to tie into, I think
Yes.
we could kind of ask for that to be connected. If there's not,
There's
that
nothing,
is on
there
the
is
other.
no sidewalk.
So to that point, I think we accommodate, they have to accommodate for the intersection per PennDOT requirements for that regardless, but where that leads on the side of this development, that's where we're asking for that look, and I don't think, obviously, along 10, I don't think it's a good choice, in my opinion, to promote traffic to be going up north towards that direction, but into the site and into the
Right.
retail and restaurant. I
Does
think
it make
that
sense for us to provide sidewalk along that entire commercial?
internal area
Yeah.
between the two buildings, yeah. And on the other side though, since it isn't necessarily
No, we really
a
don't.
land development over there, we can't really have an ask on that end of it, but,
Scott, I'll add on the signal design. We have looked into the ADA accommodations. 3 of the 4 corners, there's adequate room to do the ADA. Our initial plan showed all 4. I will be upfront with the southwest corner, which is I'll say the other cemetery property across from St. Thomas. That corner, we're still looking into the right-of-way situation there, but it appears there isn't adequate right-of-way there, and we're not sure if an easement exists. We're trying to look into where the existing signal equipment is. Point being is, we may end up coordinating with PennDOT, and there may not be ADA on that corner, depending on availability of right-of-way and what may come with conversations there. But I think based on the discussions tonight, I think as long as we're able to cross our driveway and get across the northern leg of Route 10 to provide access to the McDonald's property, I think we could easily do that. I just want to be clear that that southwest corner is going to be a little tricky based on what we've looked at so far with existing right-of-way and what may be available at that cemetery. We're actually trying to figure out if there's an easement in place, because right now it shows that equipment may or may not be on private property.
I think we've run into that before with questions from,
You know, I don't know if there is an easement there, because we discussed that prior to now. There was something
I think we did actually.
happened there. The fence got,
You know what,
I
no,
forget
it
what
was,
happened.
it was actually keep just trying to get access into anything that the township's responsible for that intersection, which
Yeah.
included line striping and further into the mall lane. I don't know, what's that road referred to?
St. Thomas.
The drive to Mom's.
Sometimes it's referred to as
Yeah.
St. Thomas Drive.
That area there, I know we had reached out to Mom's Mall and talked about the easement. I don't know if that ever got finalized or established, but, okay. So there might be, if nothing more, an easement, but.
Which would be helpful. Like I said, it's just that we're still confirming right away. We're just working off the old signal plan, but the lines were definitely right-of-way lines between the turnpike and PennDOT, and there was a lot of lines showing up on their original research. So we're trying to nail that down.
To your point, when we looked into it, that is private property of it, that road is a private road. And that was the problem with Keith accessing that. He just wanted to make sure that they were doing so as a township employee to get onto that property with the approvals in place. And I think that encompasses the existing equipment. To your point, I don't know if it would extend much beyond that for what improvements you're showing, so.
Yeah, but it will be good if I'll do a little bit of digging to see if that would have been recorded, because obviously we wanna show that on our plan updates.
Okay.
how does that work for a cemetery? Because I know they're classified as a business, but it's not a C business and it's not like an escort business. So how do they plan out, how does that work out on cemetery property? Because I know it's an organization, but it's like a private organization.
Somebody owns it, it's recorded. There's an address. You can reach out to someone if needed.
Well, I know if you need a name, I know Lee Earnshaw Senior is still a member on that board for the cemetery, for what it's worth. So maybe we can reach out and find out from him. That's the guy at the gas station right there, okay.
Yeah, and to your point, Chief, with the separation of the two drives that they're proposing, it does meet the requirements of the ordinance where it was a minimum 300 feet, and I remember seeing a number of 385 in there somewhere.
It's ballpark, I knew it was ballpark 400, yeah.
On that end of it, there was something that we had looked at for that.
Okay. We are gonna revise our drawing, we probably won't see until March, maybe even April, until we get all the comments addressed and get a little further along with our permitting. We probably won't submit, probably for a month at least,
Okay.
so.
Appreciate coming and discussing it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other business, we had the draft of the IOP amendment. And then plan review
Stackhouse, their engineer.
Okay,
See if there's any other updates that you'd like to.
sure, that sounds good.
Alright, and then there are future projects, we just had to hold in, the placeholder for the codification.
Yeah, we continue to stand.
Okay.
We're at about 115 ordinances, so about a third of the way there.
Okay.
Nice.
Any other member comments or?
Congratulations.
Thank you, I'll celebrate.
I'd like to say congratulations, welcome back, Scott.
Appreciate it.
It's like you never left.
Bring us some good information.
Yeah, hope so, and look forward to working with everybody again here.
Any motion for adjournment?
Motion.
A second.
Alright, adjourned.